He had everything people dream of: money, power, success. Yet on this morning he sat alone, unseen, unwanted, as if he didn't exist at all. In a crowded cafe surrounded by noise and laughter, no one noticed the quiet pain on his face. But what happened next wasn't random kindness. It was a moment that exposed how deeply judgment, class, and prejudice still shape who we see and who we ignore. Two strangers asked a simple question that would change everything. What they didn't know was that this moment would uncover a truth many refuse to face. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and if you're new here, subscribe to our channel Horovia and connect with us for daily new stories. Because tomorrow, I've got something extra special for you. Evan Carter lived a life most people only saw from a distance. Headlines called him a self-made billionaire, a visionary, a man who had beaten the odds. His days were filled with board meetings, contracts, and decisions that moved thousands of lives with a single signature. From the outside, everything about him looked controlled, successful, untouchable. But inside, his life had slowly narrowed into something quiet and lonely. He woke up in a penthouse that echoed when he walked through it. His phone rang constantly, yet rarely for reasons that felt personal. People needed solutions, money, approval, but never him. Somewhere along the way, Evan had become useful instead of human. He told himself that was the price of success, that this was normal, that it didn't bother him. That morning on his birthday, he chose something simple. No assistants, no meetings, no celebrations planned by people who wanted favors later. Just a small cafe in a coastal town where no one knew his name. A place where he could sit, breathe, and feel invisible on his own terms. The cafe was warm, busy, alive. Conversations overlapped, cups clinked, laughter floated through the air. Evan took a seat in the corner, watching people connect so easily with one another. He didn't know it yet, but in that room, between casual glances and unspoken judgments, something was already shifting. Because sometimes it isn't loud hatred that changes a life. Sometimes it's silence, being overlooked, being unseen. And on this ordinary morning, Evan was about to learn that prejudice doesn't always announce itself. It watches quietly, waiting for the right moment to reveal its truth. At first, Evan didn't notice it. The shift was subtle, almost invisible, the kind of thing you only recognize once it's already settled into the air. Conversations near his table softened when he stood to refill his coffee. A woman at the counter glanced at him, then quickly away, tightening her grip on her purse for reasons even she probably couldn't explain. Evan told himself he was imagining it. He'd learned long ago not to question small discomforts. Life taught him to move forward, not look sideways. But the feeling followed him. When he returned to his table, the chair beside him scraped loudly as someone pulled it away, choosing to stand rather than sit nearby. A barista hesitated before approaching, her smile practiced but distant now, as if something about him had suddenly changed. Nothing had, of course. He was wearing the same coat, the same watch, the same calm expression. Yet the warmth in the room had cooled, quietly, deliberately. Evan had felt this before, just not often and never this clearly. Moments when eyes lingered a second too long, when silence replaced courtesy, when presence alone became suspicious. He had money, influence, status, but in that cafe, none of it was visible. And stripped of those shields, he was just another man being measured by assumptions he didn't consent to. Then it happened. A sharp voice cut through the soft jazz. "Sir, is there a problem here?" The cafe manager stood a few feet away, arms folded, gaze fixed on Evan's table. Around them, conversation slowed. A few people turned in their seats. Evan looked down at the small cupcake on his plate, untouched, the candle bent slightly to one side. "No," he said calmly. "I'm just sitting." The manager didn't move. "We've had complaints." Complaints about what? Evan wanted to ask. Sitting too long, breathing wrong, existing in the wrong corner of the room. He felt something tighten in his chest, a familiar mix of anger and disbelief. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without his voice shaking, but this moment, small and public, demanded a different kind of control. "I'll finish up," Evan said, though he hadn't touched his food. As he gathered his things, he felt it, the weight of being watched. Not concern, not curiosity, judgment, silent agreement. No one spoke up. No one questioned why he was being singled out. Silence wrapped itself around the moment, thick and complicit. Then a chair scraped the floor again. A little girl stepped forward, her movement cutting through the tension like a crack of light. She looked at Evan, then at the adults around him, confusion written plainly on her face. She didn't understand the rules everyone else seemed to accept without question. Her grandfather followed closely behind, his eyes scanning the room, reading it instantly. "What's going on?" the old man asked. The question hung there, simple, honest, dangerous. Evan didn't answer. He couldn't, because he knew this wasn't just about a cafe or a cupcake or a misunderstanding. It was about who was allowed to belong without explanation, and who always had to prove they deserved space. And as the room waited for someone to speak next, one truth became impossible to ignore. This moment was no longer quiet, and whatever happened next would reveal far more than anyone was prepared to admit. The room went completely still. Not the comfortable kind of silence, but the heavy, dangerous kind where every breath feels too loud and every second stretches thin. Evan stood frozen beside his table, his jacket half on, his hands gripping the chair as if letting go might make everything collapse. The manager's eyes stayed locked on him, sharp and suspicious, as if daring him to do something wrong. Around them, people watched without blinking. Phones hovered just low enough to pretend they weren't recording, but high enough to be ready. Evan felt it then, the familiar fear he'd spent his life believing money could erase. The fear of being misunderstood, of being labeled, of knowing that no matter how calm he stayed, the story had already been written in someone else's mind. One wrong word, one wrong move, and this moment would no longer belong to him. "I just wanted coffee," Evan said quietly. The words sounded small in the open space, swallowed by judgment that had already decided he was a problem. The manager took a step closer, too close, close enough to make Evan's pulse pound in his ears. Someone near the counter shook their head, not in defense, but in silent approval. That hurt more than the accusation itself. Then the little girl spoke. "Why is everyone mad at him?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Heads turned. The question landed where excuses lived. No one answered her. They couldn't, because saying it out loud would mean admitting the truth. Her grandfather stepped forward, placing himself between Evan and the manager without raising his voice. "He hasn't done anything wrong," he said steadily. "You're treating him like he has." The manager hesitated. The certainty on his face cracked just for a second, and in that crack the entire room shifted. People looked away. Some looked down. Others looked ashamed. Evan felt something break open inside him. Not anger, not fear, relief. Someone had seen it. Someone had said it out loud. But even as the tension eased, Evan knew this moment would stay with him forever, because it proved something he could never unlearn. Sometimes racism doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers, until someone brave enough forces it into the light. The silence didn't break right away. It thickened. Evan felt the weight of every stare pressing into his back, into his chest, into the years of moments just like this that he'd told himself didn't matter. His heart raced, not because he was afraid of the manager anymore, but because he recognized the pattern, the quiet agreement, the comfort people found in letting someone else take control so they didn't have to question themselves. The manager cleared his throat, glancing around as if searching for support that suddenly wasn't there. A few customers shifted in their seats. One woman folded her arms tightly, staring at the floor. Another man near the window looked away altogether, as if the moment might disappear if he refused to witness it. The authority in the manager's posture weakened, but the damage had already been done. Evan slowly released his grip on the chair. His hands were steady now. His voice was calm, not rehearsed, not defensive. "I didn't raise my voice," he said. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't do anything except exist here. He paused, letting the words settle. And somehow that was enough. No one interrupted him. The little girl looked up at her grandfather, then back at Evan. Her face held confusion, but also something sharper, awareness forming in real time. The kind of awareness that changes how a person sees the world forever. Evan realized this moment wasn't only about him anymore. It was shaping her too. The manager stepped back, muttering something about a misunderstanding. But misunderstandings don't feel like this. They don't leave rooms holding their breath. They don't expose how quickly people decide who belongs and who doesn't. Evan picked up the untouched cupcake. The candle was still unlit. For a brief second, he considered walking out, leaving the moment unfinished, unresolved, easy for everyone else to forget. But instead, he stayed, because leaving would let them pretend it never happened. And as he stood there, in a room full of people suddenly forced to confront themselves, Evan understood something deeply unsettling. This wasn't the worst moment. This was just the moment before everything changed. The moment eventually passed, the way moments like this always do, without an apology loud enough, without words that could truly undo the harm. The cafe returned to its noise and movement, but Evan did not return to who he had been when he walked in. Something fundamental had shifted, not broken, but awakened. He sat back down, slowly, deliberately, as if claiming the space that had nearly been taken from him. The cupcake was still there. The candle was still unlit. And for the first time, he understood how easily dignity can be questioned, even for someone the world calls powerful. Wealth had not protected him. Status had not shielded him. In that room, he had been judged before he was known, and that realization stayed with him long after he left. Evan walked out of the cafe later that morning into the cool coastal air, carrying more than disappointment. He carried clarity. He began to see how often silence allows injustice to survive. How many people witness moments like this every day and choose comfort over courage. How racism doesn't always look violent or loud. It often looks like suspicion, exclusion, and quiet approval. That experience followed him into every room he entered afterward. Boardrooms, meetings, public spaces. And slowly it changed how he moved through the world. He spoke up more. He questioned decisions others ignored. He listened to stories that sounded uncomfortably familiar once he knew what it felt like to be dismissed without cause. But this isn't just Evan's story. It's the story of countless people who are asked to explain themselves for simply existing, who are watched, judged, and pushed aside while others look away. The real question is whether racism still exists. The question is this: when it shows up quietly in front of you, will you be the one who stays silent or the one who speaks?